So I married a film critic.
Welcome to So I Married a Film Critic. I'm your co-host, Julia.
This is Barry the Film Critic. Hello, everyone.
And we decided to talk about the movie Mixed Nuts with Steve Martin.
And so many brilliant comics who should have known better. But, you know, this is Nora Ephron coming off of Sleepless in Seattle. This is Steve Martin coming off a huge hit with Father the Bride and the sequel on the way. So, yeah, it looked like this project couldn't miss. And it was a Christmas film. And for me, the indication that something went wrong was the film was about to open at the Warp Cinema Center, one of my favorite movie theaters. And I was about to go out of town for a little Christmas trip for a week. And I'm like, oh, man, I'm going to miss Mixed Nuts. I've been waiting to see this thing. And I come back a week later, and it's gone. I thought, that's funny. Really? The Steve Martin Christmas comedy? It's like January 1st. It's gone already? That was kind of a writing on the wall sort of thing. And then I saw it on video cassette and went, I see the problem.
Well, this movie came out in 1994, and I don't remember ever knowing about it.
Well, you know, there was another film that came out within weeks of it. You might have heard of called The Santa Claus. Mm-hmm. You know, which is a holly jolly Christmas classic that everyone goes to see over and over and over again. There were a lot of Christmas movies that came out this season. This was also the same season, in fact, within weeks of release of Miracle on 34th Street, the remake with Dylan McDermott.
Which I love.
Yeah, so there's a lot of competition. But, you know, everybody, it was a weird Christmas season. I remember it well because it was Stargate, Interview with the Vampire, and The Santa Claus, and then this thing.
Yeah, this thing. Okay, well, this is the kind of movie that takes place on one day. It's Christmas Eve, so everything we're watching is all in one wacky evening.
Wacky is the word. I wonder how many times remember wacky, wackier. Yeah.
So it opens with Steve Martin, you know, riding his bike down Venice Beach.
I love this opening so much.
Yeah, it's really nice,
Love
actually.
it. He's on his bike. The typeface for the credits even looks like LA Story. He's going through Venice Beach. The Drifters, White Christmas, my favorite version of that song, which is probably made famous in Home Alone, is playing in the soundtrack. Like, yes, and all these amazing names. Robert Klein and Madeline Kahn are going by like, oh, man, this feels like a classic. And Martin has dyed his hair for some reason, whatever. I'm just so happy. And then suddenly there's a collision, a crash, and the movie stops working almost immediately.
Okay, so we have ex-con Felix being chased down the road by his angry pregnant wife, Gracie, played by Juliette Lewis. And her ex-con boyfriend, Felix, is dressed like Santa Claus.
It's Anthony LaPaglia. I'll say quickly, I've never understood his film career. He did a comedy called Betsy's Wedding, an Alan Alda movie that made him, he stole the film and he plays a gangster in it. He's been sort of defined most of his career as because he looks so much like Robert De Niro. Mm-hmm. And then he finally did this movie, Analyze That, where he had a scene opposite Robert De Niro where they're mirroring each other. That's kind of his career arc, like getting cast as gangsters because he looks like De Niro, and then finally doing a movie where he's with De Niro. And I haven't heard from him since. I don't know if I think he might be on some crime show on TV.
Oh, well, good for him.
But in this movie, he's miscast as a starving artist. Weird to see him cast opposite Juliette Lewis. And by the way, Juliette Lewis, it's bizarre watching her in this because I had such a crush on her in the 90s. She's given so many brilliant performances, worked with so many great directors, and she's insufferable in this movie. She screams the entire film.
Juliette Lewis?
Yes, she's so unlikable. It's crazy how unlikable she is. I mean, even a Natural Born Killer, she was more endearing. It's crazy. Like, I've never disliked Juliette Lewis before until this movie.
Okay, well, as they're fighting and yelling at each other.
It's like, that's all they do.
There's these rollerbladers that
oh, man.
are coming.
The auspicious film debut of Jon Stewart.
Yeah, who I didn't recognize until the very end because these ridiculous rollerbladers come down with a Christmas tree at least 3 times in this movie.
I get. Do you think are they like a Christmas tree courier service on
No,
rollerblades?
I think their Christmas tree keeps getting messed up and they keep going back and getting another one and they keep trying to rollerblade down the sidewalk with this tree.
I wonder if they thought, that couple in Christmas Vacation where Julia Dreyfus, remember they're next door and Clark Griswold keeps screwing up their Christmas, throws the tree through the house. I wonder if they thought, we got to have that for this movie. And we'll just have rollerbladers through Venice. But yeah, it's Parker Posey and Jon Stewart. It's like that should have been a movie right there. That's a funny idea that they can't get a Christmas tree to their house. It's a one joke, but I mean, that's a funny joke. But yeah, they kind of literally roll in and out of the movie like they're on a traveling roadshow of Starlight Express.
Yeah. So, okay, is Philip Steve Martin?
Steve Martin.
Okay.
Yeah.
So he ends up taking their tree because everybody's angry and they end up just leaving. And so Philip picks up the tree and he takes it to his office.
And what's the name of his office?
Lifesavers.
Which used to be the title of this movie. In fact, it was very confusing because, I mean, up until just a few months prior to the movie opening, it was still called Lifesavers. There were all these movie magazines that, yeah, Lifesavers opening on Christmas. And then at the last minute, like, mixed nuts. So that was, it was called Lifesavers for the longest time.
So
maybe the candy was like, no. Lifesavers, maybe they're like, no, you're not, no. Well, we will sue if you name your movie that.
Maybe. But before Philip gets there, the Juliette Lewis character actually calls Lifesavers.
Which is a suicide prevention hotline.
Yes.
This is a comedy. Yeah.
So Steve Martin gets to work, Philip. This is Philip. And he finds out he's getting evicted by the landlord. Apparently the landlord's a big skis ball. And
played by Gary Shandling.
Yeah. And because they've been unable to pay their rent for months, they lost their funding for this suicide hotline. So he doesn't want to tell.
Wouldn't it be a nonprofit? That's a weird plot line in general.
Well, yeah, but just because they're a nonprofit doesn't mean they don't make money and they don't pay rent.
How in the world could we not find funding for a suicide hotline prevention service working during the Christmas season?
Maybe they are really bad at fundraising, obviously.
And I guess from the looks of things, that actually explains a few things.
Yeah. So then this is where we meet Mrs. Munchnick.
Played by the brilliant, the late wonderful Madeline Kahn.
And Catherine.
Played by Rita Wilson.
Yes. So they work at the suicide hotline and they basically say like Lifesavers and when they answer the phone, and then they talk to these, well,
it's usually stand-up comedians making little cameo appearances.
Yeah. And I don't want to make light. I'm not making light of suicide, but the people
the movie sure is.
The movie does. So forgive us, but they have the most ridiculous people calling them.
Well, of course. I mean, the best, just say it's in the trailer too. The best is Stephen Wright, who's like the master of deadpan stand-up comic. He, his opening line is, "I'm at the end of my rope. I don't want to die." And he's got a gun pointed to his head in a phone booth. I actually like this moment.
And Catherine's like, I can't hear you. Just click the phone, and because you're breaking up. And so then he basically kills himself.
We hear a gunshot, and she's like, "How?" And she hangs up on him. I mean, look, here's the thing. Not to get too ahead of it, but why not? Who cares? So this movie, it doesn't stick the landing in terms of the dark comedy. And it really should, because that part of it could work. It doesn't quite work. This movie gets soft and gooey a lot. And it's also, it's so tonally inconsistent. I mean, Danny DeVito, what he could have done with this. And Nora Ephron, rest in peace, brilliant writer, extraordinary, and left us with so much good work. I really admire so many of her films, and I've read Heartburn and a few other of her books. This movie doesn't work because it doesn't, it's one thing if you're nasty, it's another thing if you're cookie cutter sweet or you find some pathos. This film I feel like they're winging it from scene to scene.
Well, yeah. And it sounds like they just like told these people, hey, you're going to call in the suicide hotline. Just do whatever you want. Yeah. Just be wacky.
Yeah. Wacky is such, the topic of a suicide hotline on Christmas Eve. I mean, it's, it's like, if the movie took place in like a drug center, or like a VA hospital, like if you're going to go with something that dark, it should be a lot funnier. Or at least, again, like consistently dark. This movie, like it's kind of timid of all of the stuff that it brings up. But it keeps bringing up like there's a subplot about a serial killer.
Oh yeah. So people keep calling and they say they're worried about the seaside strangler coming to their house. And one of the things is the people on the hotline, like Catherine, she's like, well, do you fit the profile of somebody that the seaside strangler would want to kill? You know, apparently he's got, I don't know, he only kills like certain types of women. And when they describe themselves, she's like, well, you have nothing to worry about. Thanks for calling.
It's odd watching Steve Martin and Rita Wilson in this because Efron had just done Sleepless in Seattle. It's a terrific movie. I suspect everyone listening to this has seen it.
They probably wish we were talking about that movie.
Well, here's the thing, though. I watched this film, and I'm watching Martin and Wilson, and they're wonderful, but they have no chemistry at all, which is strange. It's strange to watch Steve Martin, who's so magnetic and one of our greatest comic minds, and Wilson, who's a real scene. They have no chemistry at all in this movie. They seem to be in two different kinds of films, and the way his character is written, the way he's kind of mopey but lovable, and the way she is neurotic and scatterbrained but also supposed to be lovable. I'm thinking Efron probably had Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan in mind for these roles. It really seems like it's not really a good fit for either of them. Martin seems like he's trying to make up for it by falling down in a lot of scenes. Whatever. I get it. Add some farce, add some slapstick where you can, but it just doesn't do anything.
Okay. Steve Martin is one of those actors for me that I cannot get on board with him in a romantic lead very, very well.
Why is that?
I don't know, but
It's because you don't find him attractive.
I don't know.
It's silver hair, right?
No.
The wackiness? Too much wackiness?
He doesn't have that, like, sex appeal. You know what I mean? Like, he's not the kind of actor that you watch that you want to see be sexy.
Okay. All right. Let's go through. Well, no, let me go through my 80s Rolodex. Okay. So, John Candy, sexy?
No, I don't.
Okay.
What?
Chevy Chase, sexy?
No.
Bill Murray?
I could see him more than the others.
Eddie Murphy?
Yes.
Okay. Now we're getting somewhere.
How long are we going to do this?
Martin Short?
No.
Eugene Levy? Just thinking, who else would have been cast in this movie had these actors not been available?
Well, it's just, I don't know what it is, but like, he's like your dad. Like, he's like a dad. Not your dad, but a dad. You know what I mean?
Hello, lifesavers. What? What do you want? Don't do it. All right. Merry Christmas or whatever.
No,
bye.
I didn't mean specifically your dad. I just meant like the dad type.
All right. Well, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, is that important though? Because these are, I mean, as written, these characters they're
okay, but
they're
when
loopy, they're
we
strange.
Yeah, but when we get to the quote unquote like love scene,
Yeah.
it's just very awkward.
It's like two people who just met each other are forced to make out. It's sometimes
exactly.
It's weird. You never know. I've mentioned this a few times in the show. Like I think of like J-Lo and George Clooney or Pierce Brosnan and Rene Russo. Like that's electric chemistry.
Yes,
and you would never think to pair those two. I think Steve Martin and certainly Rita Wilson. Not only are they attractive, but like they're comic forces of nature. It's strange to see them in this movie because I don't know if they were misdirected. I don't know if they thought the script isn't really working, or if they're just trying too hard. Maybe we're not seeing their best work. I don't know enough about the production of this movie to assess exactly what went wrong. There's so many possibilities because there's so many things that went wrong with this.
Mm-hmm. All right, so let's talk about Mrs. Munchnick.
Yes, very close to Mr. Mushnick from Little Shop of Horrors. I wonder if that was intentional. It's strange that Madeline Kahn has all these scenes with Robert Klein. Robert Klein is the one character that she connects over the course of the movie. Robert Klein was a wonderful... some of his material is a little dated, but Robert Klein was a great stand-up comedian, also did a lot of films and acting. And they were in a Broadway play when they were doing this movie called The Sisters Rosenzweig, and Madeline Kahn was brilliant in that. So it's unfortunate they went from that to this. But yeah, Mrs. Munchnick at one point in the film is stuck in an elevator for most of the running time. And God bless Madeline Kahn, she tries. Her character is stuck in an elevator. They constantly cut back to her. It's just variations of help, you know.
And then she's like, I'm still in here, because they forget about her.
Yeah, and the movie kind of forgets about her too. It's, you know, what a terrible waste of this wonderful actress. Of all the people to get stuck in an elevator, don't do that to Madeline Kahn. Do it to Anthony LaPaglia. Don't do it to Madeline Kahn.
Okay, so at one point, Philip calls his girlfriend, who's a loan officer,
Yes.
to see if he can get a loan for lifesavers.
Gosh, who is this actress? She has one scene in the film. It's the most thankless of roles. She's like the unpleasant, shrew ex-girlfriend. It's like one scene.
And then instead of giving him money, she rejects the money, and then she rejects him and breaks up with him for her psychiatrist. So...
Gosh, was it Jolie Fisher? Maybe. Oh, anyway, sorry. There's so many good. Like, even looking at the cast list just as a glance, it's pretty astonishing. And yeah, we'll get there. There's so many amazing people who pop up in this, and you really wish they would like exit the film.
Okay, so Philip's kind of running out of ideas here, and he doesn't want to tell the women that work there that they're in big trouble, because he's basically like, "This is our last month, and then we're out of here."
Yeah.
Well, then we get a really crazy call from Liev Schreiber's character, and this is his first movie.
Yeah, God bless you, Liev Schreiber. And man, boy, talk about someone who survived this film. I mean, honestly, that makes me admire him so much more now. I mean, to think like he's on Ray Donovan now. I mean, this is a powerhouse actor. I think underrated because he's not a household name, but just he's consistently excellent in everything except this.
Yeah.
I don't like him in this, and it's not completely his fault.
Well, this is a brave choice back in 1994 because...
Or the opposite.
Is it?
Well, let's talk about it. So, I mean, I guess this is 1994, so he'd be described as a transvestite or a cross-dresser. I think we would have better ways.
We would say trans woman now.
Okay,
probably.
However, the definition. I mean, in his opening scene, his family is making fun of him and calling him Arnold Schwarzenegger mockingly as he walks out the door. And the character doesn't do anything really to counter that. This is a really unpleasant and kind of aloof depiction of someone. I mean, Mrs. Doubtfire and Tootsie are more endearing than this character that Liev Schreiber is. And it's the way he's playing it is strange. And the character doesn't have any. The only characteristic about this character is that he's
lonely.
He's lonely,
Yeah,
and he's dressed the way he is, and nobody seems to like him, and they're all kind of recoiling from him. I mean, you know, calling the movie homophobic is one thing. I mean, the movie is just everything about this depiction is just it's mean spirited, is what it is. I feel like the movie does not like this character, and we're not supposed to like this character. It's uncomfortable to watch now. Without jumping too far ahead, there's a sequence in the movie where Liev Schreiber and Steve Martin do a tango together. I remember the first time I saw this film, that was the one scene I thought was consistently funny, just because it's farcical and silly. But it's also like, again, like this movie is just going, ew, and I hate that. I really do. But his performance is awkward. It's not. Yeah.
Okay, but he calls Lifesavers and he's talking about how lonely he is, and he really wants the address of this building, and Philip gives it to him.
Yeah.
And he's never they have a policy, like they don't give out the address.
Yeah.
So, I wanted to say something else funny about when the phone rings. Philip, he pulls out his little book. He writes down the time. I mean, he lets the phone ring just an obscene amount of time before he answers it. And just so that he's ready. And you're like, okay, these people are suicidal. I mean, is this supposed to be a joke?
It's a funny character choice, except everyone running this suicide hotline prevention center is unstable. I mean, I guess it's just like the Three Stooges. Our main characters are incompetent. Okay, but the topic is suicide.
Right. So it's you're supposed to find it funny, but also it's a little uncomfortable.
And it's uncomfortable because the movie is constantly switching gears. At times it's slapstick, at times it wants to be a Woody Allen film. But you know what this movie really wants to be so bad is a stage play.
Oh, that would be a good, yeah.
This is a scene of, the actors are just sitting around, standing around. There really aren't a lot of exterior shots aside from the ridiculous business with the rollerbladers. But most of this, it's just a scene of people mostly in the same set, just talking to each other. I wonder if it was written originally as a stage play. I know it's based on a French film, which has the charming title Santa Claus is Garbage, which came out in 1982.
Creative.
I've not seen Santa Claus is Garbage. I wonder if it's as funny as Mixed Nuts.
I did like Mrs. Munchnick rapping in the elevator though. She has all of these gifts in these bags that she's
unwrapping.
Yeah, and she's trying to get everyone's attention, and so she finds this. I don't know, just like a microphone, like a kid's microphone, and she starts just making up random lyrics.
This is Madeline Kahn trying to breathe some life, and God bless Madeline Kahn, just like trying to just jolt this thing to life with just anything. I mean, it's just like watching an improv in an acting class where you're like, okay, they're going for it.
Help! You! Hey! 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 You! Hey! Hey! I'm stuck in the elevator! Hey! I'm stuck in the elevator! Get me please! Come to get me on Christmas Eve! Mr. Munchnick, sitting here nothing! Hey! Come to get me, you... Oh! Whoa! Hey! Cut! Now come to get me! Stuck in this place! Get me soon or hit me in my face!
Yeah. Then there's a leukemia horny guy who calls, who just like he just wants to like talk dirty to somebody, and poor Catherine is just like, oh my gosh, and hangs up on him, but he keeps calling back.
Is that the name of the character as described in the end credits, Leukemia Horny Guy?
No, I think I came up with that.
Okay, very good. Yeah, because Parker Posey and Jon Stewart, it's not Rollerblader or Rollerblader 1 and 2, and in the end credits, it's just like Rollerblader and Rollerblader.
Oh, wow.
It had to be confusing when they were learning
Two
the lines.
rollerbladers?
Yeah, it's just like Rollerblader and then another Rollerblader.
There is another caller, the 10 items or less lady, who calls Catherine, and she's just crying because she's always going to be in the 10 item or less line because she is alone in life.
And that sounds like a Nora Ephron line. That
Yeah.
sounds like something out of Sleepless in Seattle or Heartburn. Yeah.
Yeah. So Catherine just totally loses it because she is in love with Philip. But
And you wonder why.
yeah, I don't know. But
Well, again, 'cause it's
probably
like-
because they work together and she sees
Yeah.
like,
they're
his
both kind
sweet
of
side.
Yeah, they're both kind of these morose adults who don't really have a lot going on, and she thinks that his girlfriend doesn't appreciate him, and she's right.
Then Philip has all these nonsensical sayings like, in every pothole there is hope. That he's telling these suicidal people. And it's like, okay.
How do you think this movie would have been if Tom Hanks had played Philip and Rita Wilson had played Catherine?
Well,
Because they have chemistry. I've seen them in movies together. They're
Yeah.
really good together.
I know.
Could Tom
I
Hanks?
do like 90s Tom Hanks.
Because as much as I really despise You've Got Mail, I think that movie is such a stinker, but Hanks is good in that. He's good in everything. I wonder, could Hanks have carried this thing? Because it's not Steve Martin's fault that this movie does not work. It's not his fault.
I think it's the script.
Yeah, it's the sisters Efron, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hate to say that.
Because
Do you want to list the other things that they wrote together? Because you read the stuff that Nora Ephron wrote, and you go, "Oh, okay." When Harry Met Sally, okay, yeah.
yeah.
Julia, which is she produced it, she wrote it, directed it. That was her last film, and what a terrific movie to.
Okay, so her first co-written movie with her sister is This Is My Life.
Which is okay. It's schmaltzy, but it's okay.
Then Mixed Nuts.
Oh boy.
Then Michael.
All right.
Then You've Got Mail.
Oh boy.
And then Hanging Up.
We're going down.
And then Bewitched.
Oh gosh, the Bewitched movie.
Now, the one she did without her, Julie and Julia, Lucky Numbers,
Oh, that's a bad one.
All I Want to Do,
All I Want to Do. I don't know that one.
Sleepless in Seattle,
Okay.
My Blue Heaven,
Wow, I forgot she did. That's a Steve Martin movie.
Cookie,
Yeah.
When Harry Met Sally, Heartburn, and Silkwood.
Oh my gosh, I forgot about Soakwood. Gee.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's kind of a mixed nuts,
Oh boy.
mixed bag.
Let's talk about that title, because at one point Philip explains how the movie gets the title. He explains that there's somebody in his life who was run over by a truck full of mixed nuts.
Oh.
So I'm like, is that a Planters reference? Like Planters peanuts? Because they make mixed nuts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When they couldn't name it Lifesavers, maybe she just thought, oh, all these people are nutty. It's just like a bag of mixed nuts. Hey, let's call it mixed nuts.
Oh boy. Well, so
Well, okay, so Philip gives Catherine the Fruit of the Month Club as a Christmas gift.
these are the jokes, folks.
I mean, you only give Fruit of the Month Club to people that you just don't know what to give them. If I was her, I would be thinking, wow, this is never happening.
So I mean, gosh, I mean, it's like it's hard to even keep track of all the characters, because they just kind of, again, it's like a stage play. They all kind of like come and enter, and they exit. Rob Reiner shows up in a quick cameo, and it's not enough to give the movie some juice. Gary Shandling's appearance is more of a cameo than anything, and then we get Adam Sandler.
Well, okay, but before that, we
Okay.
have Santa guy who needs stitches, and they take him to a vet.
Oh, right.
You know?
So dumb. Yes.
So there's that.
Yeah.
And then
And that's Rob Reiner, right?
yeah, and then we also have Adam Sandler's character, who is he mentally impaired in this film?
I think he's mentally impaired in most 90s movies.
Because this is Adam Sandler. Just,
Shabba-da-doo.
yeah.
Adam Sandler.
We haven't been properly introduced. My name's Louis.
Chris.
Chris. Ooh, Chris. I wonder whether your name starts with a C or a K. I wonder if you have a skinny Uncle Harry or a fat Aunt Faye. I wonder if you know how good you look in those pantyhose. I wonder if you're happy that I didn't mention anything about the things coming out of your nose. Oh, so many things for me to wonder. I wonder if you're cock-a-doop-a-dee-doo. A zip-zap-zoobity-doo, da-dabba-dabba.
Well, he's got
Screwing around.
he's got his ukulele,
Right.
and he's just making up songs.
Just messing around. I mean, if anybody is just winging it in every take, it's this guy. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's doing basically the Cajun Man bit that he was doing on Saturday Night Live. The one thing I really love about all of Sandler's scenes is that Steve Martin visibly looks so annoyed by him.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's acting. I think Martin's just like, this Saturday Night Live jerk. Like, I can't believe this guy is like in the same comedy lineage as me.
Yeah.
And of course, he would end up being this comedy superstar, and of all things, an amazing dramatic actor. But this was before, this was the year before Billy Madison. And Happy Gilmore. And the thing about The Wedding Singer, his third movie as a leading man, like that movie's endearing. He's endearing in that.
Mm-hmm.
That's a sweet movie.
He's playing a real character.
Yeah, and he and of all people, Drew Barrymore have great chemistry in that movie. Sandler here is just, I mean,
He's just being a big dum-dum.
and it's not even juvenile. It's sub-juvenile. It's so dumb.
Okay, so then
It's like a
Liev
bad birthday party clown.
Shriver makes it over to
Yes.
Lifesavers.
Yeah.
And
This is where he does the funny dance with Steve Martin.
yes. And somehow Mrs. Munchnick is unconscious behind a couch. There's just, again, all sorts of wackiness. And so when Philip comes back from the vet and meets what's his character's name?
Liev Schreiber? Oh,
Yeah.
no, I'll find out. Stand by. Chris.
Chris. So, and at this point, so Philip and Chris are alone. Well, Mrs. Munchnick's unconscious, but they're at Lifesavers. Juliette Lewis is giving Catherine a makeover for some reason. And then, there's the dance. And they're just doing this tango, and yeah.
It's basically just like how uncomfortable Philip is with Chris. And he's
Right.
basically like he's doing this dance where he's trying not to touch him. And I mean, Martin is such a brilliant, like just a total rubbery sort of physical comedian. There's
I mean, yeah, that he makes it funny.
I mean, look, it's the highlight of the movie, folks. I mean, if the scene doesn't make you laugh, nothing will. But that's the level here. It's like it's just really, it's at best low hanging fruit. At worst, it's desperate.
Yeah. So at one point
Does
during
it sound
the
like I'm not a fan of this movie? I'm sorry. I know, because I do like yourself. Like we've looked online and people are like, oh, I love this. I watch this every Christmas.
This is my
and
favorite movie.
like why? Why? That's insane.
So Mrs. Bunchnick wakes up and she sees Chris and Philip dancing together, and I think she's just like, I gotta get out of here. So she leaves, but her car won't start. And this poor woman just she physically cannot leave Lifesavers.
Right. And
So-
isn't this when she runs into Robert Klein?
Yeah. And he's got dogs, and at one point earlier in the film, she doesn't like the dogs, but now she's in tears and he comforts her, and then they basically go make out on the beach. Yeah.
One of the many things about this movie that's so bad is the music, and they suddenly really crank up the soundtrack when Robert Klein and Madeline Kahn are just sucking face. It should be this endearing moment. Instead, this movie thinks like it has like this, this like teen sex comedy mentality. So they go to the beach and they're going at it, and it's just, I just felt embarrassed for them,
Yeah.
because this could have been a cool moment, this could be like, oh, that's sweet. She has love in her life, and they've actually secretly loved each other all this year, and he recognizes how good she is. Like, there's something nice there. And I don't know if Nora Ephron just thought we got to really ramp this up to a 10, or let's make a joke of it because kids are going to be uncomfortable with old people kissing. I don't know, but it's one of the many missed opportunities here.
Yes. All right. So then Catherine comes back to Lifesavers, and she's all decked out. I mean, she's in a fancy gown, hair's done, makeup's done. And this is when
stupid things
her
are
and
like, she's
Philip-
got a makeover. Like, oh, she was so dowdy and unattractive before, and
Yeah.
now she looks beautiful. Bull crap. It's Rita Wilson. So stupid.
Yeah. So her and Philip somehow end up in the bathroom together because she's cold and wants to take a bath. It's so strange.
Yeah, it's very awkwardly written. It feels like a scene they didn't quite finish. Like, don't worry. It's Steve Martin, Rita Wilson. They'll figure it out. Don't worry.
So she's sitting on the floor of the bathtub up against the tub, and the steam is starting to fill up the room, and it's like he's supposed to undress her, and it's like, I don't want to watch this.
Yeah.
It's very awkward.
Yeah.
So thankfully they just kiss, and then the camera leaves, and
Here's the only
Yeah.
thing that could have made it more awkward. Do you think Tom Hanks was visiting the set that day? He's just like,
yeah, that's why they have no chemistry, because Steve Martin was like, ooh.
because this movie came out the same year as Forrest Gump. Do you think Tom Hanks with that that crew cut and that white outfit walked onto the set as Forrest Gump? He's watching his wife make out with Steve Martin. There's a movie.
At one point, Louis, the Adam Sandler character, sings a song to Catherine.
And again, like we've seen Adam Sandler do these concerts where he has these really hilarious songs. This is just like, oh, Catherine, you're so beautiful to me. Yes, you are. It's just maybe another take, Miss Ephron. Let him warm up. Yeah, it's just I don't know if we're seeing the best stuff. If there's actually really funny outtakes. Maybe this is one of those movies where everybody was laughing so hard they thought, oh, this is working.
Yeah,
Maybe that's the thing.
They
It's
thought
oh,
they
this
were
is,
being
this is gonna be
hilarious.
great. This is so funny. We're every day we're laughing. Maybe it's that situation, or maybe it's the other thing where it's just oh god, we got. Oh man, I got the scene where Liev and I got to dance tomorrow. Oh man, this movie.
Yeah. Okay, so then I wrote gunshots, couples getting together, and lots of shenanigans.
Well, the identity of the Seaside Strangler is revealed, and it turns out it's spoiler. It's the landlord played by Gary Shandling, and it's a kind of a funny reveal. They open a door, and he's just standing there in mid-thought with a bullet in his head, and he kind of falls down. So that's
But we don't know he's a seaside strangler yet.
right.
Yeah.
But they hide the corpse in a Christmas tree.
They hide him in the tree, and it's the weirdest thing because they basically wrap him up and stick all the branches in him, and then they're gonna like take him somewhere to dump the body. And
But here's the thing, listeners, like the tone is cutesy. That's the thing. Like if this movie was genuinely nasty, and it should be genuinely nasty and dark, that's one thing, and it would have been consistent. But like this film just is constantly going, no, we want people to like this film. It's almost like this movie is so afraid of turning on its audience. But it's a comedy about a suicide hotline. Like this movie needed to really double down on the darkness, and instead it's like, it's still cute, it's still lovable.
okay, so Gracie, Juliette Lewis, is the one who shoots him, and then they turn him into a tree, and they're taking him down the street, and then who comes back? Those lame rollerbladers again.
Yep.
And they hit the tree, all the branches fall off, and they're like, hey, there's a body here. So the cops are called, and, she's worried she's going to go to jail, and that then they identify the body, and they're like, you killed the seaside strangler. And so now, instead of going to jail, she gets like a $250,000 reward. It's the most Hollywood ending ever.
Well, it gets even worse. Guess who goes into labor?
Oh, yeah.
And then we have the thing that I hate so much, which is the funny pregnancy scene. It's a lot of like, push, honey. I hate you did this to me. Like most 90s comedies have these scenes. I mean, 9 months is like 15 minutes of this crap. I can't stand these scenes.
I'm rich! I'm rich!
What is it?
Oh my goodness!
What's the matter, honey?
My water just broke.
Oh, no, what?
You're just going into labor. We have plenty of time to No, I'm having it. Are you sure? Yes, I'm sure.
Philip?
Yes,
Dr. Kinsey will help us. What?
She's having a baby! Bring her over by the tree. By the tree. Oh, you please help.
Take her. Here, wait.
Lift up my leg, you moron!
Yeah.
Just like trying to like turn these sort of these moments into like some stupid farce. It's not only because I'm older and I've been through this, and it's this, it's not about yucks and laughs while these amazing moments are happening, but it's also just because, for one thing, it's more screaming opportunities for Juliette Lewis. And it just, this is the climax of the movie. All the actors are standing around her while she's like, ah! It's just awful. It's just so bad. So
yeah, and then she's sitting like the Virgin Mary with her newborn baby in front of the tree.
Right.
Yeah.
And the one thing that helps in the scene, there is one dog reaction shot.
Oh.
There is that. Yeah, that's always, if nothing else in a comedy, always do a dog reaction shot. Juliette Lewis is going, ah, and they react to this dog like going, oh, like that's. There you go. Good choice, Miss Efron.
So then Bill says, oh, I need $5,000 to save lifesavers. And Gracie's like, I'll give it to you out of the money that I I just won. So yay, everybody's happy.
Everybody's happy.
Happy ending.
And then
because Juliette Lewis's baby daddy is just a terrible artist, and she keeps talking about how she's with a loser. And then they show his art, and it's really not that good.
The film ends with this mural on the wall. It's so bad.
It's so bad.
At least get Thomas Kincaid or someone to do the art. Like, no, they got like, it looks like a 7-year-old child did this really bad stick figure mural of the cast in character. And then the end credits roll, and it's like, gosh, this movie can't do anything right. They've got a bad Carly Simon song starts playing.
Because she calls him a loser wall artist.
And she's right.
Yeah, and you're like, yeah, he really sucks.
Yeah, he's a
now
terrible
that they have
wall
money, he can just
go to art school,
bad wall art forever. I hope they put their money somewhere where it can grow, because that's not like they're millionaires.
And thus ends one of the all-time worst Christmas comedies ever. I mean, this is up there with Deck the Halls and Christmas with the Cranks. I mean, there's a long list of bad Christmas comedies. Surviving Christmas with Ben Affleck. There's so many of these, but this one it's excruciating because it's so many blown opportunities. It's actors who are either given way too much rope or too little rope, but they all end up hanging themselves.
Which is ironic for a Suicide Hotline movie.
I would love for this film to work. And again, like Danny DeVito or just somebody who has it's just like, look, I don't care if the audience likes it or not. We're going to go dark and we're going to stick with it. I think I've told you this before, like The War of the Roses, one of my all-time favorite black comedies. It famously had this ending that was so bleak. They tested it and the studio's like, Mr. DeVito, you got to change your ending. And he's like, screw you guys. I have final cut. So the movie got released as he made it and it was a huge hit and he was right. Like that movie it's hilarious, but it's shocking and it ends in the most unimaginable way. And people loved it. And because the integrity of that movie is consistent. This is a film that could have made a joke about what? It could have been like Heather's with the Suicide Hotline. It could have been just about whatever, how sometimes we overreact to these things or underreact. It could be, it could have been a comedy about the inability for us to save people when we have an opportunity. It could have been about how you shouldn't reach out to people over the phone when they're dealing with this sort of crisis. Like there's, I don't know that there's, I mean, it's, the whole thing is so, it's in such bad taste, but at least like find an angle. And I mean, there's no satire here. And of all things, like the serial killer subplot is probably more interesting than the Suicide Hotline plot. But the serial killer plot has no business being in this movie in the first place.
Yeah, it's just like a MacGuffin so that they can get money at the end.
Yeah.
That's it.
Although I got to say, like watching the film, repeated times, I'm constantly watching Gary Shandling's performance. Like, oh, okay, all right, he's kind of playing it kind of menacing and sinister. Like at least Shandling's like, all right, I'm going to really... Maybe I'll have a career playing villains after this, which did not happen.
Yeah. Well, how many stars do you give this movie?
Oh boy. The first time I saw it, I thought 1.5 stars because there were a few scenes that made me laugh, chuckle, and then it'd be like, 15 minutes of complete silence. Watching it again, it's for me, it's like 1 star. But even that feels very generous.
I'm giving it no stars.
Giving it 0 stars. Wow. Yeah, it's weird for me to watch. It's uncomfortable and weird for me to watch Steve Martin in a movie that's not funny.
Yeah,
because there's
sad.
I mean, for me, like my producer of this show and my brother Marty. Hey, Marty. Like we've talked about how our sense of humor comes from our father, Mad Magazine, and Steve Martin primarily. Those are the 3 things in life that have shaped our sense of humor. And Martin is consistently brilliant. He continues to be consistently brilliant. There's so few movies that he did that did not work, but this is at the top of that list. And it's incredible to see so many great comic talents not connect. From the director of Sleepless in Seattle, it's just bizarre. And, and I can't blame Nora and her sister. Like, no, like anybody should have stepped forward and said, like, yeah, maybe this isn't working. Maybe, maybe this was a cut that didn't work. Maybe it was longer. Maybe it was darker and they cut all the parts that were dark and try to make it a little more mainstream. I don't know what happened here, but it's bizarre. I've seen this movie a lot, as I told you. I've seen it so many times.
I don't know why.
Here's the thing. For one thing, I do find movies this bad kind of hypnotic because you kind of can't believe they exist. For me, this is like one of those Leonard Part 6 situations. Like, I can't even believe this movie. And the other thing is, it's also that delusion of like, maybe it'll get funnier. Mm-hmm. And I like so many of the people, particularly Martin, who are in this movie that, it's like, well, it's a Steve Martin movie. I'll throw it on. Or if it comes on basic cable, I'll watch it. And I always feel stupid for doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you kind of glad that basic cable doesn't really exist anymore, so this won't happen and you won't waste your time ever again?
It kind of exists. I mean, like I still see stuff on TV. The thing that always kills me though is the commercial interruptions, because now like they're not timed well. They used to be.
Where are you seeing it on TV?
Well, like whenever my father has a big cable package. Talking about my father a lot during this episode, and I'll be like watching stuff at his house. I think I told you this. Like they had the premiere of The Tree of Life on FX. Tree of Life is my favorite movie. And, it's like 20 minutes into the film and there's this beautiful imagery and there's this monologue about the earth is forming. And then suddenly they cut to, you ever get that not so fresh feeling? It's the mom and the daughter walking on the beach. Not kidding. like basic cable ruins movies, and it makes them long. Like they'll take a 2-hour movie and it'll be like a 4-hour slot. But yeah, this is one of those films. Like I would be in college, my college dorm had basic cable. I'd be folding laundry, like, oh, Mixed Nuts is on, and I'm watching it. I'm feeling kind of embarrassed. My roommates would come in and feel like I have to explain why I'm watching Mixed Nuts. Yeah, yeah. So you'd never seen it before?
No, and I'm never gonna watch it again. This is a one and done for me.
Any cult appeal, you think?
No.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you because we've gone through this. Is we're at the end of 2022 as we're recording this. Merry Christmas, Mazel Tov, and we just came through a season where the appreciation of Hocus Pocus was intense because the sequel was coming out and it made everybody kind of basically everyone who was a closeted Hocus Pocus fan really came out of the closet and was like, we love this movie. It's one of our favorite films. The love for that movie was so intense. And it was interesting because that film was a flop when it came out, and it was an embarrassment. And now it's this huge cult film. It's not happening with Mixed Nuts, and I don't think it will ever happen.
Like, where are you going with this? No, it's never happening with Mixed Nuts.
It's interesting to me, like, some of these films that find cult followings. And this is just not one of those. There's no defenders, and it doesn't deserve one.
Even when I was looking at the trailer on YouTube, the amount of people who said it was such a great movie, very minimal. I mean, we're talking under 20 comments. So I know for sure it's not going to come back.
Do you think any of them worked on the film?
It's only.
Do you think it's like Steve Martin, like, I'm just being ironic, or like, I'm so depressed about Mixed Nuts.
It's just the boom operator.
Boom operator. I was really proud of that one.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Can you think of a worse Christmas movie than this one?
I don't think I can.
Really?
Honestly.
Have you seen Christmas with the Cranks?
Yes. But I also read the book, Christmas with the Cranks.
The book was good.
Yeah.
I thought the book was actually funny.
Yeah. So
by John Grisham.
And I only saw the movie probably one time.
Would you go see Mixed Nuts if it was a stage play? Could this work on stage? Because they clearly want to make this like a Noise Is Off set in a suicide hotline station.
Yeah. You know what? If they changed the script and kind of like
made it funny.
Yeah, made it funny and changed like the people who called in and that sort of thing, I might be interested in that.
Who are 5 comics alive today who would be funny to call in?
Oh, like if Brian Regan called in.
Oh, there you go. Brian Regan.
Or
Dion Cole.
Yeah, or the other oh man.
Sebastian Maniscalco.
Yes, him.
Okay, we got 3.
And
don't get controversial, say Louis C.K.
No,
okay.
The guy, my other favorite one, who the bald redhead.
Bill Burr.
Yeah, Bill Burr.
Okay.
Yeah.
And one more.
Okay. Maybe.
How about Martin Short?
Well, why don't you throw a girl in there?
Oh, sorry.
I don't know, like
Amy Schumer.
Sure, she could be funny, or like Liza Schlesinger.
Yeah, she's great.
She's funny.
Yeah.
So, anyways, I think because I think they would come up with like better characters.
I would want to see today because he's now established himself as a dramatic actor as well as a highly accomplished comedic actor, though not all of his comedies are funny. Not all of them, but Adam Sandler I'd like to see in the lead role now.
Oh.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And playing his loopy co-star.
Drew Barrymore.
There you go.
Just have him do it again.
Yeah.
They got chemistry.
Yeah.
I think like take this script and just like retool it.
Yeah. It's interesting.
Right.
I've never heard anybody who was in this movie ever talk about this film. That's also very telling.
So I know you would probably change, I think we just said all the things we would change, but would you change the ending?
The beginning, the middle, and the ending. I always, that's one of the things too that always kind of hooks me is the opening where he's on his bicycle and the music is playing. It just seems like it's going to be a good movie. It does.
It always for 5 minutes.
Pulls me in. It does. And then I'm like, oh, that's right. This is terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'd actually be curious if this is anybody's favorite.
Yes, the movie The End, starring Burt Reynolds and Dom DeLuise, directed by Burt Reynolds. There it is, a comedy about suicide. Hilarious. Yes, I knew there was one floating somewhere in my brain. Yes, the end. Great comedy about suicide. So if you're listening to this going, Barry didn't. No, I got it. This is the cure, okay? If you want to see a funny movie about suicide,
Which
the
is
end.
a strange thing to...
It's kind of one of these it's like one of these topics that just you can't make a comedy out of it. That movie's really good. It's really funny. Yeah, Burt Reynolds directed it. He starred in it. His buddy Dom DeLuise is in it. It's hysterical. I really like that one a lot. Yeah, I want to watch that now to get the mixed nuts taste out of my mouth.
All right.
On that note,
Well, I think that concludes our discussion of mixed nuts.
there may be worse movies you will watch this Christmas. No, just kidding. Will not watch a worse movie this Christmas than Mixed Nuts. So watch something else. For all 20 of you on YouTube who are trying to convince us this is the greatest movie ever made, you're wrong. It's not. It's really not. There are better films you should be watching this Christmas.
All right. I hope everyone does have a Merry Christmas.
Yes. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays to you all.